Ship Nexus drifted through the void between star systems, its hull scarred by countless battles across the galaxy. Within its reinforced chambers, the greatest warriors from a dozen conquered worlds waited in chains, brought before the Vorthan Empire's most feared interrogator. Queen Velara stood 7 feet tall, her obsidian exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights of the interrogation chamber. 4 arms moved with fluid precision as she reviewed the holographic displays floating before her. Each contained detailed profiles of the captured resistance fighters who had dared to challenge her empire's expansion. Her species had conquered 17 solar systems in the past century, each world falling before their superior technology and ruthless military doctrine. The Vorthans viewed other species as inferior beings, useful only as slaves or experimental subjects. Their queen had personally broken the will of hundreds of prisoners, extracting information that led to the destruction of entire rebel networks. The chamber door hissed open, and 2 guards dragged in the next prisoner. Unlike the others, this one walked with his head held high despite the energy shackles binding his wrists. His brown hair was matted with dried blood, and his military uniform bore the insignia of Earth's Colonial Defense Force. Velara's compound eyes studied him with clinical interest. Humans were a relatively new addition to her collection of conquered species. Their homeworld had fallen only 3 months ago, though scattered resistance cells continued to cause problems throughout the outer colonies. Species designation: human, she spoke in her native tongue, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that could paralyze weaker minds. Origin world, Terra 3, also known as Earth. You will provide intelligence regarding remaining human resistance. Operations. The prisoner remained silent, meeting her gaze without flinching. His blue eyes held a defiance that reminded her of the first warriors she had encountered from his species. They possessed an unusual trait among the galaxy's inhabitants. They grew stronger when facing impossible odds. Your silence is noted, Velara continued, activating a neural probe that descended from the ceiling. This device will extract the information regardless of your cooperation. However, compliance will result in a swifter termination. The human straightened his shoulders and spoke in clear, measured tones. Captain James Mitchell, Earth Colonial Defense Force, Service Number 7749 Delta 9. Velara's 4 arms froze mid-motion. The neural probe stopped its descent as her breathing apparatus stuttered. Her translator implant worked frantically to process what she had heard, but the meaning remained impossible. Repeat your designation, she commanded, her voice losing its usual confidence. Captain James Mitchell, he said again, watching her reaction with growing curiosity. Is there a problem? The Queen's exoskeleton began to shift color, cycling through patterns that indicated extreme emotional distress. Her guards looked confused, having never witnessed their leader display such behavior. The interrogation chamber fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. It cannot be, she whispered, switching to perfect English. The records were destroyed. The entire bloodline was confirmed eliminated. James raised an eyebrow, but remained silent, sensing that something significant was unfolding. The alien queen circled him slowly, her multiple eyes scanning his features with intense scrutiny. 500 years ago, Velara began, her voice barely audible, before the Great Expansion, before my empire stretched across the stars, there was a war on my homeworld. The old monarchy fought against the rising military caste. It was brutal, devastating. She stopped directly in front of him, her towering form casting shadows across the chamber. During that conflict, a small group of alien visitors arrived. They claimed to be explorers from a distant world called Earth. My ancestors were curious about these strange bipedal creatures who seemed so fragile, yet possessed remarkable courage. James felt a chill run down his spine as pieces of an impossible puzzle began forming in his mind. One of these visitors, the Queen continued, saved the life of my great-grandmother during a rebel attack. He was wounded in the process and remained on our world to recover. His name was recorded in our most sacred texts before they were supposedly destroyed in the purges that followed my rise to power. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. His name was James Mitchell. The silence stretched between them like a bridge across the centuries. James felt his worldview shifting, ancestral memories suddenly taking on new significance. His great-great-grandfather had vanished during an early colonial expedition, officially listed as missing in action. Family. Stories spoke of his love for exploration and his habit of extending missions to study alien cultures. You're saying my ancestor was on your world 5 centuries ago? James asked, his voice steady despite the implications. More than that, Valara replied, her exoskeleton now displaying colors he had never seen before. He became part of our historical records. A human who showed honor and bravery that impressed even our warrior caste. His genetic pattern was preserved in our archives as a mark of respect. She gestured to her guards, who retreated to the far corners of the chamber. The neural probe retracted into the ceiling, no longer needed. When the military took control of our world, most records of the old ways were destroyed. But some of U.S. remembered the stories. The human who fought beside our ancestors. The one who taught us that courage was not unique to our species. James watched as the most feared interrogator in the known galaxy seemed to struggle with emotions he could not fully comprehend. For 500 years, I believed those stories were myths, she continued. Legends created to justify showing mercy to inferior species. But your DNA pattern matches the preserved records exactly. You are his descendant. The implications hit them both simultaneously. The Queen, who had built an empire on the premise of species superiority, was faced with undeniable proof that her own ancestors had respected a member of a species she now enslaved. What happens now? James asked quietly. Valara looked at him for a long moment, her multiple eyes reflecting an inner conflict that had been building for centuries. The weight of her empire's cruelty suddenly pressed down upon her, viewed through the lens of her ancestors' respect for his lineage. Now, she said, her voice carrying new uncertainty, everything changes. The prison ship continued its journey through the void, but within its chambers, the foundations of an empire began to shift. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was not conquest or technology, but the unexpected echo of an ancient bond between two unlikely allies. The Queen turned away from her prisoner, her form flickering between the aggressive patterns of a conqueror and something far more complex. The name James Mitchell had stopped her in her tracks, and with it, the unstoppable march of her empire faced its first real challenge. History, it seemed, had a long